Boy, oh boy, what do we have here? 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020 by What Culture. Oh, I love this. What Culture, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know the Elitist and What Culture are just best friends. So this is going to make for another great video. This list, I will spoil it. I've been through this list and most of the placings aren't terrible. Some of them are very debatable, but there are two especially which are just downright mindless and brain dead. So yeah, that's going to be the main crux of this video, like those two particularly. If you've seen this list, you know exactly the ones I'm talking about. Nonetheless, 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020. So before we begin this, I'm going to list off some names for people who you might see on this list, or you might think you'd see on this list. So if I'm thinking off the top of my head, most boring wrestlers, okay, I'm thinking immediately Shayna Baszler. I mean, boring personified. I'm thinking maybe Nia Jax. People like, I don't know, Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch. People who are just very vanilla, very bland. Those type of NXT guys. Hell, even Shinsuke Nakamura in 2020, because he's just been a tag team guy, hasn't really cut a promo. Guys like that. So that's who I think of when I think boring. Obviously, as you see on screen, Jake Hagar. He'd probably come up here. So, and King Corbin. These are the type of people I think of when I think boring. So let's see who our pals of What Culture think are boring. Now, I'm not going to read this right up. Basically, 2020 was anything but boring. There was a pandemic, but in pro wrestling, you know, if you're entertaining, you shine through that, but being boring is a sin. So that's what I have to say there. Now let's get into the list. So kicking us off, number 10, King Corbin. I think this is almost a unanimous consensus. When King Corbin's on TV, people either change the channel, they go on their phone, they don't really care. So this one, no real debate here. King Corbin, he deserves to be in the top 10 most boring of 2020, especially Reigns and Corbin. That was so bad. So King Corbin at 10. At 9, Statlander. Now, Statlander, when I think Statlander, do I think boring? I mean, not really. Like, when I think Statlander, I don't really think of anything. I kind of nothing Chris Statlander. Now, I'm sure, you know, people on social media adore Chris Statlander. Statlander, she's fine, but at the same note, what differentiates Statlander from any of the other women in the AEW Women's Division? There's, like, a plethora of women in that division who are similar to Statlander. They have some kind of gimmick. It's not really the best. It's not the most compelling. But it's not what I think of as boring. They're not like Shayna Baszler. They're not like King Corbin. So, in that regard, Statlander, okay, she comes in number 9. Is it the end of the world? No. Is it a bit meh? It is. So, that's Statlander. Then, at 8, we have Kushida. Okay. Japanese striking wizard Kushida needs to get the hell out of WWE. Okay. It's bold. I can get around it. The company favor big personalities. And he doesn't have one. Okay, where are the big personalities in guys like Johnny Gargano, Ricochet, Ali, all these guys who you at What Culture adore? Because What Culture, this is the same company, okay? This is the same company who wanted The Miz versus Roman Reigns instead of Roman Reigns versus The Rock. The same company who wanted Ali versus Roman Reigns instead of The Rock versus Reigns. That's What Culture. So when they say the company favor big personalities and he doesn't have one, I mean, do most guys in wrestling nowadays have big personalities? Like, this is the same company who vouches for Chad Gable to get the push he deserves. Does Chad Gable have a big personality? Like, when I look at the WWE nowadays, the amount of people with big personalities, you can really count them on one hand. Like, when I mean big personalities, I think Pat McAfee. I mean, who has a big personality? Like, bruh, you can count them on one hand. Xavier Woods, Big E. Maybe Sami Zayn, like, hardly anyone has a big personality. So this line itself is a bit sus. Never mind. In fairness, there's a language barrier that does make it challenging for the former 6-time IWGP heavyweight champion to explain why he's in the company and what he hopes to achieve. Okay, when you're mentioning the language barrier, this same thing could be said about Shinsuke Nakamura. It doesn't have to be exclusive to Kushida, but I guess because Kushida had less great matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I guess that makes Shinsuke immune to being boring per What Culture. I don't know, we're going to move on here. So yeah, Kushida's at number 8. Whatever, I don't really care for Kushida personally. At 7, Mansoor. Dude had like, what, one match in 2020? Seriously? I mean, top 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020. Did he wrestle in 2020? Yeah, he pinned Dolph in 20... He had one match. Oh, sorry, he's a regular on 205 Live. Oh, wow. Oh, 205 Live, wow. Name me 3 205 Live wrestlers nowadays. You can't. So, Mansoor... fine, okay, a bit of a cop-out, but nonetheless, anyway, moving on to number 6, Ruby Riott. Do you think boring and Ruby Riott? I mean, personally, I think Ruby Riott's more, not entertaining, but Ruby Riott has more to offer than a plethora of NXT people and a plethora of people who WhatCulture themselves vouch to get pushes. It's just personal. It's a bit subjective, this. I'm not going to get too angry over Ruby Riott, but nonetheless, it's a bit of a meh one. Number 5, Tamina. No arguments there. Moving on to number 4. Number 4, here's where it gets good. Top 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020. Number 4, we have R-Truth. WhatCulture have Ron Killings at number 4. Most boring wrestlers of 2020, R-Truth at number 4. When I think R-Truth, I think someone who, granted, you might not like the 24/7 title, you might not like the stuff he's involved in, but one of the last words I'd use to describe R-Truth is boring. R-Truth, whenever he's on screen, something is happening. He's always trying to bring entertainment to the show. Yes, the audience his segments are catered for are like little kids, and little kids don't even watch WWE like nowadays. But boring? Number 4 on the most boring wrestlers of 2020 list. Number 4. R-Truth is more boring than Shayna Baszler, more boring than, according to WhatCulture, more boring than King Corbin, Mansoor, these NXT people, Killian Dane. Like, just Killian Dane's just one to name a few. Timothy Thatcher, all these Finn Balor, Adam Cole. R-Truth's more boring than these people. R-Truth's more boring than basically everyone in the company bar 3 people according to WhatCulture. Let's read what they have to say here. R-Truth worked wonders with the Biscuit Tin 24/7 title. It's a biscuit tin. I'm dying. What great comedy. When it was first introduced in 2019, he really did. Truth's weekly antics helped break up the flow of Raw and give fans a lighthearted change in tempo from typical matches and segments. That was then, and this is now. WWE about to enter 2021 and Truth is still stuck in 2019. Okay. Anything wrong being stuck in 2019? I don't think any of us want to be stuck in 2020. I mean, that's objectively speaking. So, yeah, according to this, basically what they're trying to say here is that his comedic skits are tiresome, therefore he's boring. So because he tries to entertain, he tries to be comedic, he's boring. That's not how it works. When you think boring, you think people who naturally don't have charisma. People who naturally don't have don't have the sports entertainment value. I've named the people several times in this video now. You think of those people. R-Truth, whether you think the 24/7 title is terrible, which most of us do, me included, whether you think it's terrible, whether you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, the fact of the matter is, R-Truth is an entertainer. R-Truth, in and of himself, is entertaining. When R-Truth comes out there in a segment with Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar himself is laughing because R-Truth is saying that he wants to fight him with his friend John Cena. When Brock Lesnar himself is laughing, Paul Heyman is laughing, shoot laughing. When they're doing that at the hands of R-Truth in 2020, you have no right to say that R-Truth is boring. It's just, dude, this list is just nonsensical. So yeah, R-Truth's at 4. Okay, there better be a thing saying the whole NXT roster minus Pat McAfee should be number 3. So moving on, we're going to move on to number 3. Who have we got number 3? Jake Hager. Okay, boring. Yeah. Does he have the personality? Not really. Is Jake Hager personality-wise kind of like the King Corbin of WWE? Yeah, it's a kind of a fair little comparison I just made there. Really, Jake Hager, okay, he's the bodyguard. Is he boring? Yeah, he's the muscle. Is he trying to be entertaining? No. But realistically, are you going to put Jake Hager 3 and R-Truth 4 for most boring wrestlers of 2020? R-Truth, once again, the same guy who made Brock Lesnar off script laugh legitimately out loud in the ring in 2020. That guy is being put on number 4 for the most boring wrestlers of 2020. Gotcha. Brilliant list, WhatCulture. Nailed this one, pal. So that's that. Hager's 3. I don't think we really care about Jake Hager, so that's that. Number 2, they've got Hikaru Shida. Okay, now I know who's number 1, so I'm free to say this. Hikaru Shida's number 2. Okay, fair enough. Now, I want to be fairly objective when I say this. I'm just going to throw this out here. Look, damn, the AEW Women's Division sucks. Okay, fair enough. But realistically, we're talking about the 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020. Having Hikaru Shida at 2 and not having... Oh God, where do you even begin with this? Shayna Baszler, not having Nia Jax, not having... there's too many to name. Literally the whole NXT roster minus Pat McAfee. Like, bruh. The whole Cruiserweight division, everyone on 205 Live, most of the people they've called up from NXT outside of like Matt Riddle and Keith Lee. Dude, Hikaru Shida. Okay, now, they had Kushida on this list and they didn't have Nakamura. I'm going to make a similar comparison here. Hikaru Shida's on this list. What does Hikaru Shida do to be the second most boring, but Io Shirai does not? Like, how is Hikaru Shida and Io Shirai different? Because both, Japanese Joshi women, representatives of Japan, representatives of the women's division, both great wrestlers, both great champions. Like, Io Shirai is just one example. There's so many examples. Shida's too, okay? Am I saying that Shida is amazingly entertaining? Not really. But the people you've left off this list, it's just like, okay, so that's that. Number 2 is them. Number 1, okay. Look, I'm not a fan of The Miz. I'm not the biggest fan of Morrison. A lot of people enjoyed The Miz and Morrison more than me. 100%, cool. But let's just read through what Culture have to say. So What Culture... Trumpets of joy sounded when John Morrison returned to WWE and reunited with The Miz on the 3rd of January 2020 SmackDown. The Dirt Sheet Boys were back. Jomo was here to save Maz from singles hell and help further change in his buddy post-Fiend rivalry. Yeah, things didn't really work out. Miz and Morrison, hey ho ho, relied on lazy, not to mention unfunny WWE-style comedy for most of the year. This was barely palatable, good use of vocab there, when they were gunning for the SmackDown Tag Team titles, but it was downright offensive to watch when the pair were programmed with then Universal Champion Braun Strowman in the summer. Throughout all the title changes and Money in the Bank briefcase campaigning, both men have been uncharacteristically dull. They're so over the top and hammy, sometimes that one becomes numb to their segments, which isn't great. Also, Miz TV blows in 2020. Okay, didn't expect to be reading that, just saying. So, that's their explanation. Now, I will say, they mentioned the Braun Strowman stuff. Personally, if you watch my SmackDown reviews from May and June when they were doing that, I found those segments some of the worst segments of 2020. The night where they were having Miz and Morrison pranking Braun Strowman, Miz and Morrison were sitting in the white van, doing DX09, Slime Time Live, Double Dare 2000, Nickelodeon BS, where they were dropping slime on Caleb Braxton and Braun Strowman was laughing, or when they had the bottle explode in Braun Strowman's hands. That was horribly unfunny. Miz and Morrison reciting the Scottish play, The Raw Before TLC. Horribly unfunny. But when I think most boring wrestlers of 2020, I think guys who wrestled 22-minute matches, can't cut promos, and have no character. Once again, I could name over half of the WWE personnel. When I think Miz and Morrison, are their segments horribly unfunny? Most of the time, yes. Is Miz TV in the dirt sheet nauseating rerun lazy TV? Absolutely. But to put them number 1 on the most boring wrestlers of 2020 list, that makes your organization look like an absolute joke. Saying that the Miz and Morrison, same reason as R-Truth, because they've been involved in segments which have been largely unfunny, that makes them boring. No, not how it works. The wrestlers themselves have charisma, they're entertaining, and right there, you can't say they're boring, okay? When I think boring, I've mentioned the names before, I'll mention them again sometime down the line. When you think boring, you should be thinking realistically of people who, almost objectively speaking, have no character to explain, people who hardly bring anything to the table outside of the fact that they're great in-ring wrestlers, okay? When I think most boring wrestlers of 2020, I think of guys... People are going to hate me for this. I don't care. When I think most boring wrestlers of 2020, I think Cesaro, I think Adam Cole, I think Finn Balor, guys who, promo-wise, are mediocre at best, guys who are only good in the ring. Okay, if you're talking most boring wrestlers as far as in-ring, I mean, that might be a little bit of a different argument, but even then, wrestling isn't about wrestling. Okay, this should be common knowledge. Wrestling isn't wrestling. Wrestling is about getting people through the door, paying their hard-earned money to watch the fight. And the fight can be as good or bad as you want it to be. That doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter is, drawing money is what counts. And Miz and Morrison, R-Truth, these guys do more for getting people in the door than they do for, making the fight seem must-see. okay? I don't care how good the matches are. I don't care how bad the segments are. At the end of the day, Miz and Morrison are truth. Having them 1 and 4 respectively on this list, it's a joke. And it once again goes to show you why WhatCulture as an organization have lost all credibility. Why WhatCulture, ever since the Adams left, have just been basically irrelevant outside of these dead lists, because WhatCulture are going to get some clout in the next day or two because of this, because of how bad this list was. But at the end of the day, their reputation is as a laughingstock. Lists like this are horrific, okay? Because when I look at this list, Hager, agree. Corbin, agree. Tamina, yes. Mansoor, I guess. But at the same time, if you're going to put Mansoor, write the whole 205 Live Cruiserweight division. If you're going to put Mansoor, what differentiates Mansoor entertainment-wise from the other guys who don't cut promos and wrestle 15-minute acrobatic matches? What separates Mansoor from Jake Atlas? Like, dude, what this list should have been is them saying, here are the wrestlers who are genuinely entertaining. Pat McAfee, in 2020, Randy Orton, guys like maybe Matt Riddle, The Hurt Business, MVP, Paul Heyman, Roman Reigns, these types. Have them, and then put everyone else in the boring category. That's what you should have done, but instead WhatCulture made a clown of themselves here. So yeah, I'm going to wrap the video there. WhatCulture's 10 most boring wrestlers of 2020 list. Another awful list from WhatCulture. Yeah, enjoy the video, like, comment, so here's no drill.